Okay, today we're gonna learn about Shimush TALMIDIE HACHAMIM. There's a Gemara in Brachos. Which daf is it? Zayin? Is it Zayin Amud Beis? I think it's Zayin Amud Beis. The Gemara says there that Gadol Shimusha Yoser Milimuda. That I was actually overjoyed when I saw Rav Matasyahu Solomon Shlita. He has a sefer on the Memches Kinyanim. He brings down the Gilyon Hashas. It actually has a halachic ramification. So the Gemara says there that how do we know there's something even greater than learning Torah? We always see Talmud Torah can get kulam, but there's a hechin madrega, right? A madrega that's even higher. What is that? Timim meshamish Talmidei Chachamim. How do you know? Because it says Elisha, he poured water on Eliyahu Hanavi's hands and feet. It doesn't say he didn't Torah by him. It says what? He was meshamishim. So Vaistachos, we see from here that there's something higher. The Chazon Ish explains this very clearly. Baruch Hashem, many Jews want to become doctors. So a Talmid Chacham, a Tzaddik, a Rav, a Rebbe is like a spiritual doctor. He's a doctor for a person's neshama. So just like a doctor, he can't become a doctor until he does residency, right? He actually opens the heart. He actually, right, sees, practically speaking, how the surgery is done. So that's what the Chazon Ish explains. He says, when you learn from a Rebbe, it's all theoretical. But what makes a much, much deeper Roshem? When you actually see it in being. And there's a Medrash Pliya. There's a Medrash that says there were people that were even greater intellectually, like higher IQ or smarter than Yeshua ben Nun. You know that? There's a Medrash. It's a Mefurish Medrash Rabbah. It says, why was Yeshua Zayche? Because it says, Vahanar lo yamush mitoch ha'oel. Right? Yeshua never left Moshe Rabbeinu's hands. So much so that when Moshe Rabbeinu every time Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai, he didn't go back to his camp, right? He stood by the foot of the Machane because even 1 second he didn't want to miss the opportunity of being Meshamish, the ultimate Gadol. Rav Wolbe writes in Alei Shor that this is one of the greatest things he sees lacking in the yeshiva world. He said before the Holocaust, he saw that people were much more mekusher and wanted to be meshamish their Rebbe. The value of Shimush TALMIDIE HACHAMIM, right? Because Shimush TALMIDIE HACHAMIM is the Gemara in Ksubis. It says whatever the Gemara there says, if you're moineya, if you don't let your Talmud be meshamish you're doing the biggest disservice to him, right? So even the most mundane things, like an Eved, Kivyachol does for his master, right? The Talmud should do for his Rav. So Rav Wolbe writes in Alei Shor that these are one of the things that he saw. It's unfortunate after the Churban in Europe that obviously it's the 3 weeks. We're literally Tisha B'Av is just a few days away, and the Churban HaTorah, right? We had so many yeshivas. One of the things that Baruch Hashem in the quantity we have much more yeshivas now. You should know than in the time before Europe. But right now, one of the things that he sees in quality that's missing is that the value of Shimush TALMIDIE HACHAMIM is not in style, is not part of the thing, which is a shame. So I'll tell you an amazing thing I heard from Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal. 2 things I heard from him. One of them is much more controversial than the second. But he said amazing vart about how everybody needs a Rebbe. So he said, Rav Weinberg Zatzal said amazing vart. He said, there's a Gemara over there. It's actually right the next Gemara. Actually, it's a continuation of this Gemara that says Gadol Shimusha Yoser Milimudai. It says that La'olam Yadar Adam b'toich Shchunos Shel Rabbi. The Gemara over there says there's an inyan api hashkafas atayra alpi musar atayra that a person should always live in the neighborhood of who? His Rebbe. Why? Because Shlomo HaMelech, all the years that he lived by Shimon ben Gera, he didn't go marry Bas Paro, right? The whole Churban of Malchus Beis David, and ultimately what brought Avodah Zarah, and the whole Churban that we're fasting for, and we're moaning, and we can't go swimming, and can't have meat this week, is because if you look in Chazal, the source of it was that the sin that Shlomo HaMelech married the daughter of Paro. So Gemara says, as long as Shlomo HaMelech was afraid and had the shadow of his Rebbe over his head, he wouldn't make such a fundamental mistake. So you see, it's a gewaltige thing always to be under the shadow of your Rebbe, always live by him. They say always Rav Ruderman, people were scared. You had to be holding and learning, because Rav Ruderman would always money. We said, if you would see even in one of his Talmidim after dozens of years, he says, what are you holding? What are you learning? Tell me a kasha, tell me, So you knew that if you were going to see Rav Ruderman, that's so Rav Weinberg said an amazing word on this. He said, you see from here, why does Shlomo Melech need a Rebbe? Shlomo Melech is Chacham Mikol Adam. Who knows more? Shlomo Melech or his Rebbe? Who has more information? So he says, you learn from this Chazal, or Sheshiva brought out a beautiful point. He says, even if you're the smartest person, don't be a wise guy. Even if you're the smartest person in the world, like Shlomo Melech, you still need a Rebbe. And the Rebbe is not only, the Rebbe has so much influence on you that it caused, as long as the Shimon ben Gera was alive and Shlomo Melech was under his influence, he didn't do this terrible thing that a Navi writes that he did Avodah Zarah. It writes very bad things about Shlomo Melech. He didn't do it, but it didn't happen while he was under the thing. Now, there's amazing, if you look at the Rav Kalevsky Zatzal, mein Rebbe Zatzal was always very makbid, as I'm sure Rabbi Rosenbaum, L'Havdil ben Chaim L'Chaim, for the Gilyon HaShases. Right? Yeah. So there's amazing Gilyon HaShas on this Gemara. It refers you to a Gemara in Ksubis, and I think it's Samech Zayin over there. So there's a Tosfos there that says a fascinating thing. It says that one of the Tanaim, when he was first learning Torah by Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yeshua, he didn't come to yeshiva for a few days. So they said over there, the Tosfos brings that they asked him, where were you? He says, listen, I was doing, there's a Mefursha Gemara that Mevatin Talmud Torah Lachnasas Chala. If a Kala is going to the chuppah and she doesn't have 10 people by the chuppah, or for Halanas Hameis, right? If by the yeshiva they're going to bury somebody and there's not enough cover to give to the person, right? So it's brought down in the Chazal over there. I think it's Meseches Derech Eretz Rabbah. It says Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yeshua told him that Al Kol Psia, every step that you took, that you went and you didn't come be Meshamishas, it was Ki'ilu Shafachta Dam Naki Ba'Yisrael. It's like you killed a person. So Tosfos over there asks, you're allowed to be, it's Mevatlin, it's brought down in the Gemara Megillah, right? Mevatlin Talmud Torah, Lachnasas Kala, Hartzas Hameis. So the Rav Moshe Mikutzi, one of the great Balei HaTosfos, says a the answer. He says that we say Mevatlin Talmud Torah, that's a lower madrega. But Shimush Talmidei Chachamim, it says over there that this, I forgot this Tana, I think it was Rabbi Shmuel or one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yeshua, he says that it was Techila Shimusho. So he was called upon to be Mishamish Talmidei Chachamim. So what's the pshat? So happy that Rav Matasyahu brought this out. What's Rabbi Akiva trying to say here? He's trying to say that there's a halachic nafkamina from this Tosfos and Ksubis we learned between somebody. It comes out a nafkamina between Shimush Talmidei Chachamim and Talmud Torah. That you see in Chazal, that Mevatlin Talmud Torah, is not, that heter is not going to necessarily apply for what? Shimush Talmidei Chachamim. Why? Because Shimush Talmidei Chachamim is a grander thing. And that's what Tosfos, I think, is trying to bring out. The Gilyon HaShas, Rabbi Kiva is bringing out that don't think that this is just a Musar Dika thing, but the Gemara in Ksubis brings out that whenever you see in Chazal Mevatlan Talmud Torah, maybe Al Pi the Tosfos in Ksubis, since Shimush Talmidei Chachamim is a greater level than Talmud Torah, you're not allowed to be. That's why they said every step you took to be Halanas Ameis, it was like you killed the Dam Naki Be'Yisrael. So the idea here, like, I want to tell you a personal story. I'll tell you a thing. Rav Weinberg Zatzal actually said that this is one of the things he was always upset about. He said the problem with Hasidim is they think they have a Rebbe, they don't have a Rebbe, and the problem with the Mislagdim is they think they don't need a Rebbe. But the truth is that this is one of the major problems I see, that a lot of people, they could be great Talmidei Chachamim, have a vast, and they're great Bali Tshuva, and they do great Kiruv stuff, but some of the stuff, it becomes mixed up. When you don't have a Messiah, when you don't have a Rebbe, it becomes very dangerous. And I tell you, like, for example, one of my Rebbeim, he was Meshamish L'Chazon Ish, Harav Eliezer ben David. He said we once had a meeting. All the Persian Rabbanim from the entire United States came. It was called the PARC, Persian American Rabbinical Council. So we had over 150 Persian, like 100 rabbis from all Atlanta and New York and Baltimore and LA and all around. So he said a scary thing. He said it's important to give beautiful drashas, but he said your entire impact on the community is going to be how the Rav acts, not from his drashas, right? Because in the end of the day, especially today, we're living in a society which is so fake. But when you're Mishamish Talmidei Chachamim, it's a golden opportunity, and I think that's what Rav Wolbe was bemoaning. He's saying, they say about, the famous thing the Kotzker Rebbe says, Acharei Mos Kedoshim. Once the Gadol and the Tzaddik dies, then Acharei Mos, after he's dead, he becomes what? Kedoshim. So I know, there was a Talmud of Moshe, Zatzal, he said there was times that Moshe had to call a cab to go different places. He says, Achutz v'azar Gadol be'Yisrael, right? The Rav Shach used to say, people think the godless of Rav Moshe is from the Igros Moshe. You see much greater godless from the Dibros Moshe, right? That he was the Rashke Bahag. Even the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the whole world would send shilas to Rav Moshe, right? The entire Hasidic world. And Nebuch, people lost that golden opportunity that people should have been waiting at his door to take him where he needed to go, right? But he used to have to call a cab to take him places, and that's really a sad thing. Now, like for example, me. Somebody could give a Shalom Bayis class, and it's fine and dandy. But what's going to have a much bigger hashpah on the Talmidim is like, for example, when I first got married, Shana Rishon, I went to give Shlach Manas to my Rebbe, Reb Tzvi Berkowitz. So I opened the door. I was shocked what I saw. I saw him setting the table, like putting napkins into the cups and putting the forks. So that, practically speaking, is going to have a much deeper hashpah on a person, that, the lesson that one has to help in the house, right? There's a famous Maisa with Rav Gifter, I think, that it says one time there was a Telzer, he was like, his wife came to Rav Gifter, and he said, my husband doesn't help in the house at all. He doesn't even take the trash. He says, I should take it because it's Bittul Torah. So the next morning, Rav Gifter came to the house. So he knocks on the door. The guy says, what's the Rosh Hashiva doing? He says, I want to take out the trash because you don't take it out. So it's even in the world of Kiruv, one of the greatest people that Rosh Hashiva Shlita Rav Feldman, I heard say that it was kedai for him to build Or Sameach just for Rabbi Beryl Gershenfeld. He built his own yeshiva called Das Shlomo something, Machon Shlomo. So and I'll tell you something about Ner Yisrael, which is also very. He writes, Rabbi Gershenfeld writes that he knows all of the greatest people that had the biggest hashpah in the world in Kiruv. Like there's a big Talmud of Rav Volbe that's one of the biggest big experts in chinuch. He wrote the Sefer Zeriah Binyan. He wrote it in English. His name is Rabbi Lawrence Kellerman. I don't know if you guys know him. He's one of the. He's also a big Baal Musar. He has a lot of Musar Vadim around the world. Rabbi Gershenfeld writes that it's especially like later on when you become yourself a Rosh Hashiva, a Rebbe, a Mashgiach, right? He said all the people that had the greatest hashpah in the Olam HaTorah were the people that had a strong kesher with the Rebbe. I heard that Rabbi Neuberger Zatzal, actually when they were looking for a Rosh Hashiva for Ner Yisrael, he asked Rav Shach. Rav Shach held that they should take Rav Feldman, Shlita, because he had a tremendous amount of Shimush TALMIDIE HACHAMIM. So Hashem should help us to realize that this is actually, I don't want to say it's a meis mitzvah, but it's shocking that, there are, to this day, tremendous Ga'inei Olam, and that through being Mishamish them also we get the Messiah, because they tell you what their Rebbe taught you, and it goes back to all, So in a certain way, this idea of Shimush TALMIDIE HACHAMIM, which is greater than Talmud Torah, there's a halacha l'nafkamina taisvis in Ksubis that even though you're mevatel in Talmud Torah, you're not mevatel Shimush TALMIDIE HACHAMIM. That's why they told him that I'll call every step you took that you weren't meshamish us. It's like you killed the dam naki. It's the opportunity is there. The gedolim are there. The question is how much we value it. But really, it's an amazing opportunity to grow and grasp the Messiah, and really that's ultimately why Yoshua was. In the end of the day, always our Messiah is going to go al pi Rav LeTalmid, and just like Yoshua may have not been the smartest, but he was the most devoted to his Rebbe. That's why he ended up becoming the next manig of Klal Yisrael. The gadlus and the hanhaga of Klal Yisrael always has to be given to those that have the most shimush TALMIDIE HACHAMIM, and Hashem should help us to seize that opportunity because it's always there. Amen.